Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us. 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, but to the point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon. It's 11:58. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The Queen is celebrating her 96th birthday today, and while Her Majesty's chosen to spend it at Sandringham, back here in London, there's a very special gun salute to honour the occasion. Our royal reporter Cameron Walker is in Hyde Park for us now. Cameron, tell us more.
Well, Rhiannon, the King's Troop of the Royal Horse Artillery, which is named after King George VI, who is the Queen's father, have ridden into Hyde Park. 71 horses pulling 6 First World War era 13-pounder field guns. They'll fire from midday. Each gun will fire blank artillery rounds, 10 seconds intervals between them until they have fired 41 shots. The band of the Scots Guards will then perform Happy Birthday in honour of Her Majesty the Queen's 96th birthday, and then at 1 p.m. at the Tower of London, the Honourable Artillery Company will fire a 62-gun salute. As you mentioned, Rhiannon, Her Majesty the Queen is spending the day at Sandringham. She travelled from Windsor Castle yesterday. I'm told it's just about to happen, so I'm going to step out the way and hear the gun salute.
The gun salute at Hyde Park in honour of the Queen's 96th birthday, and from all of us here at GB News, a very happy birthday to Her Majesty. Now, in other news, MPs are debating in the Commons whether there should be an investigation into whether the Prime Minister misled Parliament about lockdown parties. It's after the government withdrew its request to delay the vote. Conservative MPs now have a free vote on the motion, meaning there's no party whip. MPs will vote later this afternoon. And the Prime Minister won't be in the Commons for that vote because he's in India on a two-day trade visit to strengthen ties with the country. He'll hold talks with his counterpart Narendra Modi tomorrow. Mr Johnson says he hopes a free trade agreement with the country can be reached by the end of the year. He also indicated he'll raise concerns about India becoming increasingly reliant on Russian fuel. To Ukraine, Vladimir Putin says he'll spare the lives of Ukrainian soldiers who are holed up in the Azovstal plant in Mariupol. It's amid warnings the besieged port city could fall to Moscow today. President Putin says he'll order the Russian military to cancel plans to storm the plant and for it to be securely blockaded instead. In France, the President Emmanuel Macron and his opponent Marine Le Pen faced each other last night in their only pre-election debate. Mr Macron accused the far-right leader of a desire to pull France out of the EU. Ms Le Pen responded defending her stance on religion and pledging to improve French people's finances. Voters will take to the polls this Sunday. And in sport, Erik ten Hag has been appointed as Manchester United's next manager. The club have confirmed the Ajax boss will take over at the end of the season. Following Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's exit in November, United have worked under caretaker manager Michael Carrick before Ralf Rangnick took over on an interim basis. This is GB News. We'll have more as it happens. Now, though, it's The Briefing with Gloria De Piero.
Welcome to The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. Coming up this hour, the Children's Commissioner for England says we should make smacking children in England illegal. Is she right? It's already banned in Scotland and Wales. I'll talk to Robert Halfon, Chair of the Education Select Committee. The controversial online safety bill was back in Parliament this week. The Culture Secretary says it will make the web safer, but some say it doesn't go far enough. The senior Labour MP, Debbie Abrahams, will be joining us. And I have an exclusive interview with John Whittingdale, the Conservative MP and former Culture Secretary. He tells me that the BBC licence fee will be no more. It will end in our lifetimes. And let me know what you think about smacking children or anything else in the programme. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Labour have tabled an opposition motion that will be voted on today. The motion will start an investigation by the Privileges Committee into whether the Prime Minister has misled Parliament. Last night, the government said that they would amend it to delay any investigation until after the publication of Sue Gray's report. But in a massive U-turn, just a few minutes before the actual debate started, the government pulled that amendment, allowing their MPs to vote freely on the Labour amendment today. Joining me in the studio to explain it all is Tom Howard, our political correspondent. Tom, what on earth... Let's start at the beginning. What is being debated in Parliament today, and then what on earth are the government doing?
Right, it sounds very chaotic at the moment, and that's frankly because it is. The idea that MPs were going to be whipped, pretty harshly whipped, to vote for a government amendment that was then pulled and the whip fell away moments before the debate started. I mean, great drama in the House of Commons today. But this is all relating to a Labour motion that the Speaker announced and allowed on Tuesday. We saw the text of that motion for the first time yesterday, which is asking that the Prime Minister and whether or not he misled the House be assessed by the
Privileges Committee. Come on,
I'm mixing
You're
my
better
keys.
than me.
I know. Oh, it's been a long day. The Privileges Committee, which is a very powerful committee, obviously chaired by the Labour MP Chris Bryant. But as part of this motion...
But majority Conservative.
Majority Conservative
MPs.
And indeed, Chris Bryant recused himself from the chairmanship of that committee for this investigation were it to go ahead. So what we're really looking at is a motion that Labour designed to be as watertight as possible, to ask the question, well, if you think you're innocent, why would you not want this committee to examine that question? And the government's response was not to vote it down outright, but to say that this shouldn't be done until the two other investigations into this matter...
has legitimacy. There is an argument there about it when all the full facts are known.
There certainly is an argument for that. I think the way in which the amendment was written, it was sympathetic towards Boris Johnson, it accepted his apology, it did all of these sorts of things. And I think that rubbed people up completely the wrong way. And it was described by the Labour Party as a wrecking amendment and became to be seen as that. Even though the government would say their intention was to, of course, have an investigation, but not until all the facts are on the table and MPs have all the facts before them. So what we have is a very difficult situation, although one that the government was thought to sort of be able to carry today.
Yes,
and then
indeed.
suddenly everything falls apart in the last 30 minutes.
Yes, and the only conclusion that one can draw from that is that Conservative MPs were expressing to their whips, their party managers, that they were just too angry to back the government on the delay for this investigation. So there will be, we assume, the vote will carry, we assume, and the Prime Minister will, before the local elections, be before the committee, but because it's majority, I mean, it could work out all right for him, couldn't it? Because it's majority Conservatives, it could be exonerated, and, everything moves on.
Well, I suppose this is the gamble that Number 10 are now making. Of course, a gamble that they have made with the Prime Minister in absentia. Of course, the Prime Minister is not in Parliament at the moment, so this is obviously a very chaotic situation. But, of course, there is a way through for the government here. If there is no evidence to suggest that the Prime Minister knowingly misled Parliament, and that's the key bit.
Indeed.
If he didn't knowingly mislead Parliament, well, the committee could find that, and he could be cleared.
Let's chat later. But thanks for that, Tom. Now, have you ever smacked your child, or did your mum or dad ever smack you when you were little? It's illegal to do so in Scotland and in Wales too. Now, the Children's Commissioner, Dame Rachel de Souza, she's the Commissioner for England, says the government should consider banning smacking in England. But the Education Secretary has responded. Nadeem Zahawi, he doesn't support that proposal. We're here to discuss this and much, much more. I'm delighted to be joined by Conservative MP and Chair of the Education Select Committee, Robert Halfon. So, do you think England should follow suit? Is Dame Rachel de Souza right, or is the Education Secretary right that it's up to parents whether they smack their children?
Well, God forbid I smacked you, you'd rightly report me for assault. If I smacked a dog, I'd rightly be hauled up before the courts for cruelty to animals. Yet we say that if we smack our children, that it's the nanny state, that shouldn't interfere, even though we tell parents, for example, that they should put seatbelts and baby seats in the back of cars. So I think the Children's Commissioner is right to call for a discussion and a debate on this. I'm not necessarily calling for an outright ban. I recognise it's very difficult. If a child puts his hand on a fire, for example, you might give that child a very light smack, and I recognise that parents also do the best for their children. But I do think the Children's Commissioner is right to raise this. I think we should have a debate. In Wales, before they banned it, they had a big education programme to try and offer advice to parents as other ways of dealing with children at difficult times. But I am very against violence to children. I think they are defenceless, they are vulnerable, and we don't allow it for adults. So I think that this discussion about whether we should allow it for children should be debated properly across the country.
And you're inclined, you've given quite a nuanced answer there, but it sounds like you're inclined to support a ban if push came to shove on this.
Well, I'm inclined, my sympathies are very much with what the Children's Commissioner has said. However, I do recognise an outright ban may be very difficult because, as I say, if a child puts his hand on a fire and you automatically smack that child's arm even lightly, would that come under a ban? So this is not an easy issue to pass legislation on. I mean, it may be that an education programme from the Children's Commissioner and others who are qualified to offer parents alternative ways might be an important first step. But as I say, if I'm not allowed to smack adults or animals, why should we then say, well, it's okay to smack defenceless children?
Okay. Thank you for that response. Let's talk about something which has raised eyebrows this week. Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister, his institute says that 70% of teenagers should go to university. He's backed by some of your former parliamentary colleagues, George Osborne, and even the Prime Minister's brother, the former Minister, George Johnson. Are they right?
Well, I was the son of an immigrant father, and I was only the second person in my family to ever go to university. Sadly, my older brother beat me to it, and it was a great time of my life. But I do think that Tony Blair is fundamentally wrong. We know that many thousands of students who go to university are whacking up huge loans but not getting good graduate skilled jobs at the end. And what the mantra should be is not university. It should be skills. And what Tony Blair should have done is said, I'd like to see millions of young people do apprenticeships and technical education as well as university. Why didn't Tony Blair say, well, why not have a 50% target of students doing degree apprenticeships? These are higher apprenticeships. There's no debt at all. In fact, students get paid at the same time. They earn while they learn, and they're virtually guaranteed to get a good skilled job in the company they've done that degree apprenticeship in. So to me, it is a no-brainer. Had these things been available when I was growing up, I would have jumped at the chance to have done a higher apprenticeship. And I often think that the elite, all of the government, and by the way, I went to university myself, but all of the government who went to university often don't understand the values that an apprenticeship or technical education bring, and we should be encouraging that, and Tony Blair should be encouraging that as much as university. In fact, his own son, Ewan Blair, runs a brilliant apprenticeship training a company, and I hope very much that Blair reconsiders.
Now, big debate in Parliament today, controversial about whether it's the right use of parliamentary time or not. But given that it is happening, and given that there will be a vote at the end of the parliamentary day today, do you think the Prime Minister should face an immediate Privileges Committee investigation to look into whether he knowingly lied to Parliament? Have you decided how you're going to vote?
I've just literally come from the House of Commons chamber in order to do the interview with you. I want to listen to the debate, and my instinct is that I have no problem with the Prime Minister going to the Privileges Committee, but I do think that these things should be done once the so-called Sue Gray, that's the independent civil servant who's doing an inquiry into all this Partygate business, it should be looked at when that's completed, and when the Metropolitan Police have fully completed their investigation, and then perhaps it should be decided what the next course of action should be for the Prime Minister. So I haven't genuinely decided what I'm going to do this afternoon. It may be that I abstain because I don't object to the principle of it, but I do think that it should happen once all the investigations and the independent inquiry has been completed.
But your option, your favoured option, isn't on the table. It's just the Labour motion. It had been expected to be on the table, the option you favour, but your party have withdrawn that option at the last minute. Have you any idea what's been going on there?
No, I mean, I was I was okay with that option, that amendment. I read it early this morning. I thought that it said that there should be a vote in the House once all the investigations had been completed. I think that's fair. I have no idea why that amendment has now been taken off the table. But as I say, I don't have any personal problem with the Prime Minister appearing before the Privileges Committee and these things to be discussed. But I do think that you have to do things in the right order, and that's why I'm more inclined to abstain, because I think this should happen once all the vote, should happen once all the investigations have been completed.
Thank you for leaving that debate to join us and talk to our viewers today. We do appreciate it. We always appreciate having you on the show, Robert Halfon, Chair of the Education Select Committee, Conservative MP. Thank you.
Bye.
Now, MPs have been debating the long-awaited online harm bill in Parliament this week. How do we keep our children safe on the internet while also protecting free speech? Labour MP Debbie Abrahams joins me in a moment. That is after your weather.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. Mostly dry on Thursday, plenty of sunshine, but the breeze increasing over the next 24 hours or so. The reason for the settled weather at the moment, low pressure to the south of the UK, high pressure to the north, an easterly flow developing, drawing in quite a lot of dry air at the moment, but we will see changes as we move into the weekend. For Thursday afternoon, plenty of sunshine across the whole of the UK. It will be hazy at times. The easterly breeze just starting to pick up, so noticeable along some eastern coasts. Perhaps some low cloud mist and murk holding on across some eastern coast of northeast England here too. Temperatures pegged back 11, 12, 13 degrees. But come further west, temperatures rising 19, 20 Celsius possible, well above average for the time of year. Moderate UV levels too. Through the evening time, some mist and fog starts to develop in one or two spots. Low cloud moving back in off the North Sea down the east coast here, so turning murky as the night goes on. That easterly wind also starting to pick up, becoming noticeable by the end of the night. Temperatures generally into mid-single figures, towns and cities holding up well above freezing. So a fresh start to Friday morning, a dry, bright start for many, though low cloud across some eastern areas. The southeast seeing some thicker cloud, this pushing its way westwards through the morning into the afternoon. It should break up, however, we will see showers develop here too. One or two of these could be heavy as they move into the West Country, though the Midlands northwards, plenty more sunshine to come. Some low cloud around the coast, keeping it cooler across northeast Scotland, eastern England, but elsewhere temperatures again high teens, well above average. Through the evening we should start to see the showers fade away across southwest England. Elsewhere generally dry, though notice again some low cloud moving in off the North Sea later on. And that will set us up for the weekend itself. Cloudy for many, the risk of a few showers, the best of the sunshine in the east where we'll see the highest temperatures.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The long-awaited online safety bill has not been short of controversy. Some think it doesn't go far enough in protecting individuals, while others argue it will erode free speech. And it's another example of the nanny state. Debbie Abrahams is Labour MP for Oldham East and Saddleworth and was a member of the Parliamentary committee which scrutinised the bill. And I'm delighted that she joins us now.
Morning, Gloria.
Hello, nice to see you. Nice to see you. The Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, says this groundbreaking bill will make the UK the safest place to surf the web. Do you agree with her?
I think it's certainly a step forward, but you're absolutely right, Gloria. We still have a number of concerns. We're worried that the focus is too much on content and not around the systems that need to be put in place by the tech platforms. But from my point of view as well, we don't have, certainly the bill has just one clause in it around disinformation. So whereas there's progress around individual harms, and certainly in terms of tightening up regulation around what is illegal offline should also be illegal online. There isn't enough around the societal harms. So the disinformation, for example, that is being used by the Kremlin, by Putin, in terms of their propaganda war within Russia, in terms of their war against Ukraine. We had really extensive evidence from Facebook whistleblowers to show, for example, how Facebook was used to organize the US Capitol insurrection and how they do that. And Facebook had that intelligence and didn't do anything. We all know what happened there. So there are real issues still within the bill.
OK, so disinformation is a concern of yours. If we look at the things that the bill is designed to crack down on, and we're talking about children largely, but self-harm, eating disorders, bullying. The argument has been that the social media companies use algorithms that bombard children with harmful content like this, whether it's about suicide, dangerous diets, which promote anorexia. The government wants to stop those things happening. They say that's the purpose, the main purpose of this proposed law. Will they succeed? Will those algorithms be stopped?
So there are some, the bill is quite good on that. So it requires that the social media companies develop risk assessments, which are then have to be presented to Ofcom as the regulator, and their adequacy needs to be reviewed in that context. However, we also need to recognise that the digital world is changing all the time, and there wasn't enough around future-proofing. So how can we make sure that the regulator and research is one step ahead? What we don't know enough about, Gloria, is, for example, how the use of social media, even not necessarily being subjected to harmful information, but just by using it, how that affects the plasticity of our brains. And I think that is something that we need to do. So future-proofing, further research in terms of the content, and the harms there, obviously, but also in terms of making sure that the regulator is one step ahead of these companies.
Will it deal with children having access to pornography online?
It should do, and we'll be making sure that it does. So these are the bits that it is quite good. So in terms of individual harms, in terms of regulating so that what is, as I say, illegal offline is also illegal online, and is prosecuted as such. But that's not the entirety. We believe that the scope of the bill, and I'm talking about the Labour Party, but also the joint committee that did do the pre-legislative scrutiny, which is across party committee, that it should also include the societal harms. So individual harms, particularly focused on children, but societal harms as well. And we're seeing, that's not really recognised. It's not really understood across the country, internationally even, and it needs to be, because it influences every aspect of our lives.
It certainly does. There's also this debate about legal but harmful content, and who decides what is harmful, even though it's legal. How did the committee of MPs cross-party, where did they fall on that issue?
So that the ball is back in the court of the tech platforms to present these risk assessments about how they are going to ensure that they have a safety by design system. So we can't, as a committee, and we can't legislate for all of the content. What we can do is ensure that the systems that the companies are operating that prevent, for example, children being sent down these rabbit holes of further and further harmful content, that happens. And as you rightly said before, Gloria, about the algorithms, about how they use the business model of these platforms is keeping people online for as long as possible, to make as much money as they can, to put it bluntly, regardless of the content that children and others are being exposed to. And that can be benign, but as you rightly say, it can also be harmful. I mean, the evidence around the extreme pornography that primary school age children were being exposed to was quite shocking.
And finally, we've just got a little bit of time left. I've pre-recorded an interview with the former Culture Secretary, John Whittingdale MP. We're going to be playing that a little later in the show. In that interview, he says the BBC licence fee will end within our lifetimes. Do you think that's inevitable too?
I hope not. And I also feel strongly about Channel 4. We need our independent, particularly on independent news stations, excuse me, sorry, Gloria, our independent news channels and broadcasters to be there to provide the public service broadcasting that we've relied on for so long. And that's, I would say that's valued not just within this country, but across the world.
And I know you've got a cough, but you forgive me for asking what the big issue, the big parliamentary issue of the day is. Partygate. Again, in the House of Commons, there's a police inquiry, there's Sue Gray. I mean, how many inquiries do we need into this?
I can't stress how important this is, Gloria. This is about our democracy. It's about the public having trust in our institutions and those that lead those institutions. We know that politics and politicians are, in terms of the confidence that the public has in us, it's at an all-time low. We have to recognise and uphold a rules-based system. So the fact that the Prime Minister has been found to have broken the law, in this particular case, I think we can point to other instances where he has also broken the law. It is incredibly important, and he needs to be held to account. Nobody is above the law. Everybody needs to be held to account around that. And the added importance, as I say, is in terms of our democracy and the trust that the public has and has put in us as politicians.
Debbie Abrahams, I just have to ask you, because you said there are other instances where the Prime Minister has broken the law. I'm not aware of any. It may have been a slip of the tongue.
No, well, all right, I'll put it this way. Over a year ago, I asked a question about the unlawful activity of the government, of which the Prime Minister is the lead, in terms of the publishing of PPE contracts. I was a co-complainant in a legal action against the government And the Prime Minister at the time said that they had not broken the law. It was found in the High Court the following week that he had broken the law. That was the second time, and he failed to correct the record.
Debbie Abrahams, thank you for explaining that to us. Thank you for your time too. Good to see you today.
Pleasure.
Next, my interview with the political veteran John Whittingdale MP, the Conservative MP and former Culture Secretary, started as an advisor to Margaret Thatcher, and he thinks the BBC licence fee has had its day. First, here's your headlines.
Thank you, Gloria. It's 12:32. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. MPs are currently debating in the Commons, as we speak, whether or not there should be an investigation into claims the Prime Minister misled Parliament about lockdown parties. It's after the government withdrew its request to delay the vote. Conservative MPs now have a free vote on the motion, meaning there's no party whip. And MPs will vote later this afternoon. And on a key day in the Commons, Boris Johnson's not there. He's in India on a trade visit to strengthen ties with the country. The Prime Minister says he hopes a free trade agreement can be reached by the autumn. He'll hold talks with his counterpart Narendra Modi tomorrow. The Foreign Secretary has announced a wave of new sanctions against Russia. Liz Truss says it will affect those with Ukrainian blood on their hands. That as Vladimir Putin has ordered the Russian military to abandon plans to storm a steel plant in the city of Mariupol, where Ukrainian troops are still being holed up. The Russian president has instead said it will be securely blockaded. It's amid warnings the besieged port city could fall to Moscow today. Some sports news. Erik ten Hag has been appointed as Manchester United's next manager. The club have confirmed the Ajax boss will take over at the end of the season. Following Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's exit in November, United worked under caretaker manager Michael Carrick before Ralph Rangnick took over on an interim basis. And to mark the Queen's 96th birthday today, a 41-gun salute in Hyde Park in London to honour the occasion. Her Majesty is not in the capital. She's spending the day at Sandringham in a cottage loved by her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh. And a new photo has been released to celebrate the Queen's 96th birthday today, taken last month in the grounds of Windsor Castle. Her Majesty is pictured with the two of her white fell ponies. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to the briefing with Gloria De Piero, just after the break, in just a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Now, you're probably familiar with my Real Me interviews with MPs. This one's a bit different. I talked with veteran Conservative MP John Whittingdale. He's had a fascinating political life, and he takes us down his political memory lane, which started as Margaret Thatcher's political advisor. And he tells us why he thinks the BBC licence fee won't survive for much longer. John Whittingdale. Normally when we start these interviews, the sort of pinnacle of people's political success is when they're elected to Parliament, which you were in 1992. But my goodness, what a journey you had before then. So in 1982, at the age of 23, you are head of the Conservative Research Department. You're going to be a special advisor to various cabinet ministers. By January 1988, you become political secretary to Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Where to even begin? Biggest memory from working with Margaret Thatcher?
I mean, it was very intense. Unlike today, when Downing Street is full of huge numbers of people, when I went to work there, it was a very small team, almost entirely civil servants. I was the one political appointee. And so essentially there were sort of 6 or 7 others who would spend a vast amount of time. I would spend probably on average about 3 or 4 hours a day with her, and sometimes with speech preparation and the rest it was a lot more than that. So I had a lot of contact with her, and she was an inspiration to work for. She could be very demanding, and she could be quite fierce occasionally, and I was still, as you pointed out, quite young. So sometimes I was a little bit intimidated, but she was also very sensitive to the people who worked for her, and could be very understanding and compassionate.
Tell us something we don't know about Margaret Thatcher. Is that even possible?
I mean, I'll give you an example, actually, which illustrates the kind of person she was. She did have an immense sensitivity to people's personal circumstance. So if any member of her staff had any problem, then she would be very concerned for them. I remember one of her private secretaries was going through a very difficult sort of break-up of his relationship, and she said, "Oh no, what are you doing at Christmas? You must come to Chequers." I mean, I suspect there was nothing he wanted to do less than go to Chequers. But you know, and then when David Plunkett's dog died, I remember she spent a lot of time writing a personal note to him in sympathy, and so she had that side of her. She could be very, you know, she was the Iron Lady, she was the conviction politician, she was very tough, but she also had a very compassionate side to her, particularly for the people she knew and who worked for her.
She was the Iron Lady. Do you think it was easier to be an iron politician in the age before 24-hour news media, social media? Is it easy to have such conviction when you're not being sort of battered around with various attacks on a almost minute-by-minute basis? She
always felt that the press were bound not to be nice in what they wrote about her, so she had a policy of not reading it. And indeed, if she saw herself, I mean, she watched the news a lot, but if she came on, she'd turn it off. I mean, she just didn't want to know. And every morning we would meet to go through, you know, the morning meeting, and we were given a press summary by her press secretary, Bernard Ingham, and she read that, but Bernard, you know, obviously left out the bits which perhaps she didn't need to know or would have been upsetting for her. So I think you're right. I mean, I think today things are so different, 24-hour news, social media, Twitter, etc. But her general philosophy, which was, it's always, you know, it's not going to say anything nice about me, therefore better not to read it, actually is a very good philosophy, which, you know, I think you're quite sensible to apply today to Twitter.
Are you on Twitter?
I am on Twitter. And also,
well, you're not following your own advice.
And I get well, I'm on it. I generally don't read what people say about me because it's almost always abusive. But no, I mean, Twitter is valuable in terms of getting out messages and telling people what you're doing, etc.
So before you worked for Margaret Thatcher, you are special advisor to 3 successive Secretaries of State for Trade and Industry. Wow.
And I started my job working for the first one, Norman Tebbit, on the Monday morning after the Brighton bombing the previous week. And of course, Norman and his wife were very, very badly hurt. His wife was left paralysed. And my first meetings with Norman Tebbit as his special advisor were at his hospital bed in Stoke Mandeville, where he was, mainly because she was so badly hurt. And the civil service set up a private office sort of in a, I think it was an RAF airfield quite close by. And he literally had to run the department for quite some time from his hospital bed. So it was a rather traumatic way of beginning as a new special advisor.
That's extraordinary. Do you have key moments from working with with either Norman Tebbit or any of the others? The toughest moment as a special advisor?
Well, I worked for Leon Britton as a special advisor during the Westland crisis, which a lot of people will have forgotten, but at the time was one of the great sort of political controversies where, Michael Heseltine resigned over it, Leon Britton then resigned over it, and there was a lot of speculation that Margaret Thatcher was going to have to resign over it. And I remember I spent a lot of time with Leon Britton, obviously, during that time, and I remember when he reached the conclusion that he could no longer remain in office, and so he resigned. And I was inherited by his successor, who was Paul Channon.
How does it help you to be a special advisor ahead of becoming a member of Parliament and then a Secretary of State?
Well, being a special advisor tells you about how government works. You see government from the inside, and then of course I went on and spent nearly 5 years working for Margaret Thatcher, and so talk about learning at the feet of the master. That was an extraordinary opportunity, and still, I've been in Parliament, as you say, for 30 years. I've been in the cabinet. I've chaired a select committee, and I go to and talk to audiences, and I tell them some of the things that I've done, and they say, yes, that's fantastic, but actually, what we really want to hear about is what was Margaret Thatcher like?
Which is exactly what I did. How do you feel about the sort of backlash against too many special advisors, political sort of types going into Parliament?
I think Parliament has always had people from sort of a political background. The great thing about Parliament is it's a mixture, and never more so now, actually. But there have always been people who have worked inside government as special advisors. David Cameron did. Before him, several of the sort of big figures in the past. Tony Newton did before him. I think Enoch Powell worked in the Conservative Research Department. So it's not as if it's new. What has happened is the role of special advisors has changed. When I was there to provide a political input, but the civil service were there to provide the policy advice, and we worked very easily alongside. And to some extent, I think that the process of government has become too politicised, particularly number 10, which has now got a huge number of political appointees in positions which always used to be held, like head of communications. My day, Bernard Ingham, a absolutely straight, civil servant. Since then, it became a politicised position. A chief of staff became a politicised position, and I'm not sure that's an improvement.
Interesting. You mentioned you were chair of a select committee. You were chair of the Culture, Media and Sport Select Committee during the phone hacking affair. Tough gig. Your toughest moment?
Well, yes. Also, possibly still the biggest audience of any parliamentary event in history, because the hearing we held with Rupert Murdoch was watched across America, it was watched across Europe, across Australia, across China. It did literally go out everywhere. And of course, we weren't at all sure, but he was going to come. And, we had this slightly bizarre discussion about what would happen if he refused the summons of a select committee to appear before Parliament. And there was talk about, a cell underneath the clock in the clock tower that was reserved for this. I mean, it was a faintly ludicrous idea that we'd imprison Rupert Murdoch, but we didn't know until the very last minute that he was coming. He did then come. We had this historic hearing, and then of course, after people had listened to him speak for an hour and a half, and people were probably sort of thinking they'd just about had enough, we had this dramatic moment when somebody came up and walked round from back and put this pie in his face, which again went out live across the world.
Yeah, what were you thinking during that? Because you don't know it's a pie at the time. It could be something far more sinister.
Indeed, and it was a very dramatic moment because his then wife, Wendy Deng, was sitting behind him and sort of leapt in the air and chased this chap out. I mean, it was actually only shaving foam on a sort of cardboard plate.
Yeah.
But you're right, we didn't know that at the time. The policeman in the corner sort of didn't leap to his feet. I mean, he took a bit of time to actually gather what was going on. If you see, it's still on YouTube, and you'll see me saying rather sort of feebly, order, order, as this man was pursued out. And in retrospect, I mean, the newspapers the next day, I think the Sun headline was "Humble Pie" because he'd made this remark about the humblest day and all the rest. So it was treated, as something to make jokes about. But you're quite right; it could have been something far worse. And I went to see the Speaker soon afterwards and said, "Look, this is, a shocking event." And the Speaker set up an inquiry as to how it had happened, and actually changes were made.
So you've worked on media policy for many, many decades. There is one hot potato, but that's rubbish. There are so many hot potatoes in that area of public policy. Will the BBC licence fee survive beyond my lifetime and yours?
I've always felt that the BBC licence fee has many flaws. I mean, it's a flat rate charge with no assistance available. Everybody has to pay it. And there are lots of people now who, for the first time, are beginning to say, hold on, I don't watch the BBC. You've got a lot of very good entertainment now available elsewhere from streamers as well as the commercial broadcasters. You've got other news providers growing, all of which is great. And the BBC, I think, is still an absolutely central pillar of the broadcasting establishment, and I would not want to see the BBC go at all. I think there will always be a role for the BBC, but I think it is difficult to go on justifying why everybody should be forced to pay a charge for it. And in time, I think that may have to change. It will take time, and the answer to your question is not probably for 10 years, but eventually I think we will have to find another way, because simply the way in which people consume TV is just changing so rapidly, and it really is the case now that people will say, hold on, I don't need the BBC, and therefore I'm not quite sure why I should be forced to pay for it.
So the end of the BBC licence fee in our lifetimes is what you think?
I would say in our lifetimes, yes.
Not imminently, but in our lifetimes.
I mean, the government initially said the other day, this will be the last licence fee settlement. The licence fee settlement runs till 2027. I don't think it will be possible to change it before then, or indeed even at that time. I think for a start it will need for us to have moved to a world in which everybody gets their television through the internet, for instance, rather than over a TV aerial. Because once that happens, then you can adopt models like Netflix or Amazon or the other streamers and actually have a subscription. And that is simply not possible now. So those options become feasible in time, but it's going to take a bit more time.
John Whittingdale, thank you very much. Now, back to Parliament, where the debate is underway and events have been moving very quickly this morning. Here to bring us up to date with what's happening is Tom Howard, our political correspondent. A lot's happened this morning, so just tell us.
It really has. Let's just row back to where we found ourselves at 11:20 a.m. This morning, of course, we were expecting the government to lay its amendment to amend the Labour motion, to try and delay this all, to some extent to kick it all into the long grass, of course, the motion being to refer the Prime Minister to the Committee on Privileges. Now, something extraordinary happened 10 minutes before the debate started, and that was the government pulled its amendment and gave its members a free vote, said they wouldn't tell their members of Parliament, Conservative MPs, they wouldn't tell them to vote one way or the other. In effect, conceding the motion to Labour. Since then, the debate has started, and whilst there's been one or two members of the Conservative side who've been saying warm words towards the government's original idea of delaying this until after the Sue Gray report came out, there have been many, many more who have been saying what a mess this is. Particularly in the last few minutes, Conservative MP William Ragg. Now, he's chair of an important committee called PACAC. It's about constitutional affairs within Parliament. And he revealed that he'd actually written a letter to Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of the 1922 committee, back in December. So he was one of the original letter writers saying that the Prime Minister should go. He also said that he'd vote for Labour's motion. And I'm sure there will be a number of Tory MPs who vote with the Labour Party. More numerous, perhaps, may be those who simply don't vote at all. It's interesting, looking at the Green benches right now, the Conservative side has rather thinned out, and the opposition side is still pretty full. The Conservative Party has gone down to a one-line whip, which means they no longer have to be in Parliament. So some Conservative MPs have thought, sod this, I'm going home.
Yeah. It really is extraordinary because obviously the government has famously got this whopping majority, but they didn't feel confident enough to put forward an amendment which, you know, has some coherence. It's really interesting. Boris Johnson Prime Minister is in India, so he won't be, I'm sure his aides will be keeping him abreast of what is happening in the Commons. He travels with journalists and he speaks to journalists on the plane. And one of the things that he said was that he will be the Conservative leader to lead the Conservative Party into the next general election. I mean, nothing's guaranteed, is it? How does he know?
Nothing is guaranteed. I'm sure that's what he hopes, and that's the image he is trying to project. But ultimately, a week's a long time in politics, and as we found out this morning, 10 minutes is a long time in politics too. There can be no guarantees with this. What I would say is that for now, despite the anger of Conservative MPs on this particular issue and how Conservative MPs feel about the propriety of referring the Prime Minister to the Committee on Privileges, on other issues they do support him. William Ragg, in his speech earlier today, said that the Prime Minister had done a fantastic job on Ukraine and in other areas. I don't sense that there is a willingness to get rid of him amongst Conservative MPs quite yet.
Yeah. May elections, how they're feeling? Very briefly, if you would.
Very, very briefly. Within the May elections, of course, only about 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks away now. The Tories are not expecting to do well at all. Labour say it's an uphill challenge for them.
Yeah, obviously, they do.
Expectation management is always paramount, but the Conservative Party is really expecting a pretty poor night and potentially a real-world electoral event might drive home what is in the minds of Conservative MPs about their leader.
Thank you, Tom. You've been watching The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. I'm back every Monday to Thursday from noon. Up next, it's On the Money with Liam Halligan. For now, let's take a look at the weather.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. Mostly dry on Thursday, plenty of sunshine, but the breeze increasing over the next 24 hours or so. The reason for the settled weather at the moment, low pressure to the south of the UK, high pressure to the north, an easterly flow developing, drawing in quite a lot of dry air at the moment, but we will see changes as we move into the weekend. For Thursday afternoon, plenty of sunshine across the whole of the UK. It will be hazy at times. The easterly breeze just starting to pick up, so noticeable along some eastern coasts. Perhaps some low cloud mist and murk holding on across some eastern coast of northeast England here too. Temperatures pegged back 11, 12, 13 degrees. But come further west, temperatures rising 19, 20 Celsius possible, well above average for the time of year. Moderate UV levels too. Through the evening time, some mist and fog starts to develop in one or two spots. Low cloud moving back in off the North Sea down the east coast here, so turning murky as the night goes on. That easterly wind also starting to pick up, becoming noticeable by the end of the night. Temperatures generally into mid-single figures, towns and cities holding up well above freezing. So a fresh start to Friday morning, a dry, bright start for many, though low cloud across some eastern areas. The southeast seeing some thicker cloud, this pushing its way westwards through the morning into the afternoon. It should break up, however, we will see showers develop here too. One or two of these could be heavy as they move into the West Country, though the Midlands northwards, plenty more sunshine to come. Some low cloud around the coast, keeping it cooler across northeast Scotland, eastern England, but elsewhere temperatures again high teens, well above average. Through the evening we should start to see the showers fade away across southwest England. Elsewhere generally dry, though notice again some low cloud moving in off the North Sea later on. And that will set us up for the weekend itself. Cloudy for many, the risk of a few showers, the best of the sunshine in the east where we'll see the highest temperatures.
I'm Liam Halligan. Join me every weekday at 1 p.m. for On the Money, your daily dose of economics, business and consumer news. I've got 25 years experience covering economics and finance. We hold grown-up discussions with a host of experts who really know their stuff. We can't buy gas and store it. That was a mistake, wasn't it?
I think it was a mistake.
Even you, Liam, don't have a crystal ball.
Inflation's a real threat.
Every weekday at 1, you're On the Money.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify.